Hello, one and all. Welcome to March and welcome to Sports Night. My name is John Rubenstein alongside Connor Beckler, and it's one of our favorite times of the year here in Studio A. The bracket is set. Brackets are filled out. We're all ready to go for March Madness. Connor, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Thursday, Friday, those are my favorite days of the year. You put your book bag down, throw the books away for the time being, and just sit in front of the TV and enjoy some.
Feeling good about your bracket?
I'm feeling good right now. A couple things that I might want to sleep on one more night, just make sure, I'm comfortable with this moving forward. But all in all, I think it's going to be a good year for me in the bracket challenge.
Fair enough. I'm feeling good myself. Talk to me Saturday. Might be a different story, but for now, everything's all good. Anyway, we have everything you need to get you ready for March Madness. We're going to break down each region. We've got 4 analysts ready to go, and we're going to start with our first one in the South region in 30 seconds.
All right, we're jumping right in with the South region. We are pleased to have with us today Charlie Brown. He's our South regional expert. How you doing today, Charlie?
Doing great, Connor. John, you boys looking prime as usual.
Charlie, before we get into the South region, I got to ask you your take on the Big Ten tournament, because I know a lot of Michigan fans right now are just so energized, looking forward to March, but also still feeling great about that championship victory back-to-back years.
Yeah, it was a great run. Michigan was one of the hottest teams in college basketball last week. Really felt like they couldn't be stopped no matter who it was, even though they went up against a Purdue team that had beaten them twice earlier in the season. The first game was arguably a fluke, and the second game was close throughout, and Michigan had one of its greatest offensive games of the season. So really going into Purdue, you knew that they had a shot to win that game because of how hot they were. And Michigan State, they had already beaten them once, so they had no reason why they couldn't beat them a second time. So really for Michigan, it was all about how confident they were in just going through and fulfilling the game plan that Coach Beilein set out for them. And it worked out pretty well as they were able to play it out perfectly.
I think it's pretty unbelievable how Coach Beilein always has the guys ready to go this time of the year in March. So it's going to be a fun NCAA tournament to see.
Beilein's teams always get better as the year goes on. The question, though, is that momentum going to be quelled by the 10-day break that they had in between the conference tournament and the NCAA tournament? I mean, that remains to be seen, but they are at a 3 seed. That's in another region, though. Let's start with the South region. I'm looking at Virginia, Kentucky, Arizona, a lot of really primetime teams in this region. Charlie, a lot to choose from, but what is your game to watch in the first round?
Well, I'm going to skip ahead from the early weekend matchup and go right into late weekend Saturday, and that is when Kentucky faces off against Arizona. Now, one thing to look out for is freshman phenom DeAndre Ayton. Ayton averaged over 24 points per game in the Pac-12 tournament. He also averaged 20 points per game and 11.5 boards throughout the regular season. Now, Kentucky isn't on the short end of this either. They have a center in their own in P.J. Washington. Now, Washington only averaged 10.5 points per game, along with 5.5 rebounds. And when you look at the stats and just the pure film on the athleticism of both of these big men, it's obvious that DeAndre Ayton is a bigger, stronger, and more athletic version of P.J. Washington. Now, this does aid the Wildcats in that if they keep their offense running through DeAndre Ayton like they have throughout the regular season and the Pac-12 tournament, then they can come out on top of this game. But it's going to be very interesting to see if Coach Cal can make the adjustments that Oregon made when going up against the Wildcats. In the last 11 minutes of the game in Eugene, their defense denied DeAndre Ayton the ball in the paint, and because of that, he was held scoreless in the last 11 minutes of the game, and that's why Oregon was able to roll over them in a late-season matchup. And the only way Kentucky can win this game is if they deny Ayton the ball in the paint and allow the shooters to take over for Arizona, because they are not one of the nation's best three-point shooting teams. In fact, they are outside of the top 50 going into the tournament.
That's interesting stuff there in the Wildcat matchup. I think that's one that everyone's going to look forward to, a second-round matchup. That's like the Wildcat section there with Davidson, too, taking on Kentucky in the first round. Should be a cool matchup. Who is your upset pick in this region? Because there's a couple possibilities, but maybe one that stands out a little bit more.
Right. I'm going to stay in the great Midwest, with Loyola of Chicago, the Ramblers. I have them as my upset pick in the first round. Now, they will take on Miami in the first round of the tournament. And this team is loaded from top to bottom. They have 5 guys on the roster who average over 10 points per game, including their point guard junior, Clayton Kuster, who is one of the top 3-point shooters in the country. He shoots 40%. The team, shoots 40% from 3, and Kuster is also an upperclassman who not only leads the team in scoring, but also 3-point shooting. And let's not forget, this Loyola team has been on big stages like this before. They went into the Swamp and upset the Gators earlier this season. What makes Kuster so special is his ability to drive and kick. One thing that makes the Cinderella team so great is their ability to shoot the 3-ball, and that's one thing that Loyola does better than most teams in the country. They also rank 5th in offensive efficiency overall during the regular season, and that's why when Kuster is able to drive and kick the ball out to those amazing 3-point shooters, this team is dangerous to make a run, and that's exactly a recipe that you need to make a run in the big dance. Is a great driver who's able to kick to open shooters and shooters who will knock down the shot in clutch situations, which they have already proven they could do earlier this year down in Florida.
You know, Charlie, they say great minds think alike, and I also have Loyola Chicago knocking off Miami in the first round as well, so I agree with you there. There's always some good upsets in that 11-6 matchup, so I think that's definitely a possibility.
I'm on the bandwagon with that.
All right.
Pick 2. I think I'd be curious to know how many teams in the country have 5 starters that average over 10 points. I think that's a pretty remarkable stat. I don't know the competition that Loyola Chicago is taking on, but still pretty good when you can score the basketball like that.
Absolutely.
You're always going to be an upset
All right.
favorite.
Yeah.
Mark it down. We're going all in on Loyola Chicago to get out of the first round. So, Charlie, all that being said, who is your ultimate favorite to come out of this region and go to the Final Four?
Well, I know Virginia right now holds the best odds to win not only this region, but the entire tournament. But I'm going to go with the Cincinnati Bearcats. Now, Cincinnati is special because they are 2nd in the nation in total defense. Now, Virginia might be 1st, but one thing Cincinnati does dominate over Virginia is the 3-point shooting and their offensive efficiency. One reason why I think that Virginia is not going to be successful in this bracket is because of Kyle Guy. Now, Guy is their best player and leading scorer, but one thing that Guy also does that isn't very good is that he takes a lot of shots when his team is down in ball games. And 2 out of the 3 times this season where he led the Cavaliers in shooting, they lost both of those games. Those were both of their losses all year. Now, another reason why Guy is kind of a liability for them is because even though he has scored over 20 points per game in 4 games this season, all 4 of those games were against teams that were outside the top 50 in total defense. Now, when Virginia starts to fall apart, Guy takes really bad shots, and that is not what you want out of your best player and leading scorer. But for Cincinnati, they have Gary Clark, who is one of the most complete players in this region. Athletically, size-wise, and he can just dominate a game. He can block a 3-point shot, take it down for a dunk like he did against UCF earlier this year. And he is not afraid to go down in the paint and then guard on those shooters on the outside. That is someone you need to win in this tournament, is a versatile big man like Clark. And I think that gives Cincinnati a huge edge and why I see them winning this region.
Charlie hates Guy, it sounds like.
Cincinnati, I think, is a very respectable pick. They also have one of the best defenses in the country too. They're looking really good right now.
And not a lot of people like Arizona and talking about Virginia a lot. So I think it's kind of sneaky when you're in your bracket pools against other people to pick something that's a little bit different. And Cincinnati's an interesting option there.
Right.
I like that. Charlie, thank you so much for your analysis. It was very comprehensive, and we like that a lot. So it's going to be time to move on to our player analysis. And on the couches, we have Jack Roberts and Justin Zach, and they're going to break down some players to watch and some hidden gems that you might find in the South region. Take it away, guys.
Thank you, John and Connor. I'm Jack Roberts, along here with Justin Zach, and we're going to discuss our player analysis for the South region, starting with our player to watch. And my player to watch is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from Kentucky. Now, Kentucky has had a bit of a rough year, but they're playing their best basketball as of late, in large part because of this freshman. He wasn't the starter initially, but he's taken over. He's an excellent defender. He didn't start out on a great streak, but he's doing very well as of late. He had 29 points in his last game and had, I think, 19 the previous game, which has really propelled the Kentucky Wildcats through the SEC tournament. As I said, he's a great defender. He can force a lot of turnovers and score off of them. He's also great at driving to the basket and forcing fouls as well. He's a very good all-around player. He doesn't score a lot of points. He only averages about 14 points a game, but he's come up big for the Cats, and he's going to continue doing so in the tournament.
My player to watch is someone you all know, and his name is DeAndre Ayton. This guy is potentially going to be the #1 pick in the NBA draft. This guy is a physical specimen, and I don't see anyone like him else in the league. I like to compare him to Shaq, but with a jump shot. So he's really hard to guard. He could take you inside and post up and back you down with his strength, and then he could also hit jump shots and even threes. This guy could carry the Arizona to the championship, as he's the most talented player in the March Madness, and I think he's so valuable to have. And this guy is a juggernaut.
Absolutely. We're going to discuss our hidden gems now, starting with mine, and I'm going to go with C.J. Massenberg from Buffalo. Now, Buffalo's had a very good year so far, in large part because of this junior. He's a very good player, a very good scorer. He started out averaging about 20 points per game in the beginning of the year, but it's kind of declined a bit to 17, but a very good player nonetheless. What impresses me most about him is how he averages 7.5 rebounds per game as a guard. That's also in part because he's transitioned more to the 3 spot, but he's been huge, and he's an excellent leader as well for Buffalo, very big and key player for them. Him, along with the other players, form a very good, formidable Buffalo defense and a very balanced offense, and he's the main part of that. So I think he's my hidden gem for Buffalo.
For me, I'm going to go with hidden gems as the twins from the Nevada Wolfpack, Caleb and Cody Martin. These two have been great for Nevada all year. They're both 6'7". Cody Martin's versatile, as he actually shifted to point guard after an injury to their other point guard. And then you have Caleb, who's averaging 19 points per game and is the Mountain West Newcomer of the Year. And not to mention, they have great chemistry. They always know where each other are on the court. And with this duo, I think they could make a run in the tournament.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to do it here for our South Region coverage. Back to you, John and Connor.
Thank you, guys. This is an awesome analysis. Got some good names in there, people that I'm going to be certainly looking out for as the games get underway Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, I like that dynamic duo at Nevada. That's
Yeah.
like a lot of people saying that's one of the most lethal offenses in the country.
I've heard that too.
Yeah, so appreciate you guys bringing that to us.
Have you guys heard Peyton Aldrich from Davidson, too? He's a Cinderella kid that might be like the Steph Curry of that Davidson team. You know,
Well, according to
bring back
Charlie,
memories.
Davidson's not going to get out of the first round against
Yeah,
Kentucky.
well,
but
you know what?
What does Charlie know?
Kid who makes 49% and 40% of his threes, averages 21 points a game. I think he deserves this
Could be an
name
upset.
in the show
Could be an
today.
upset.
So Peyton Aldridge, you heard it here first. All right, we got Oliver here. It's time to break down the East region. Moving over to the other side of the bracket. So Oliver, let's get started with your game to watch in this region.
There are a bunch of really good candidates for the game to watch, especially in the first weekend, but I think I have to select West Virginia versus Murray State. And the reason why I'm selecting that game is because Murray State is on a 13-game win streak. Having won their conference title, they're going up against Press Virginia, as everybody knows. And West Virginia has had a tremendous year, a little bit of a downfall about halfway through the season, in which case they had a couple of losses in Big 12 play. But overall, they've shown that they can beat the best teams and they can really shut people down defensively with their press defense that they run all the time. To start, their senior guard, Javon Carter, in his final year, averaging 17 points per game and 4.8 assists, as well as Daxter Miles, who's averaging 12.7 points per game. Carter's been the second or back-to-back Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. Defense wins championships, and so I do think that this West Virginia team will be entertaining, as they always will be, but also Murray State will bring the heat because they have some respect as well with Jonathan Stark. You probably don't know this kid, but he averages 21.8 points per game, and I do think that it will be a shootout, in which case defense will prevail with West Virginia.
Yeah, I think it's always interesting when you have a defensive juggernaut going up against an offensive juggernaut and who wins out in that situation. So I agree that that's a super, super attractive first-round game to be looking out for. So let's move on, though, to an upset alert that you might see coming out of this region.
I think everyone's got their eyes on this upset alert, but I think it's more so an upset alert, in my opinion, given how good Arkansas actually is. Do not forget how good Arkansas is, but do not forget the Butler way is the golden way in the tournament, it seems. They have a new coach this year, which could be a little bit different.
Former Michigan guy.
I think that overall, Butler, given their conference, they've had some tough losses, but they play with some of the best in the country with Xavier and with Villanova, and that will be the difference maker when they go up against Arkansas. In Arkansas, they have Jalen Barford, who's averaging 18 points per game, and Daryl Macon, who's averaging 16.9 points per game. So they do have some scoring there on Arkansas. But you have Keelan Martin on Butler, 20.8 points per game. And I do think he will be the difference maker. He's the senior forward. Most seniors play very well at this time of year. And I do think that Butler thrives off their selfless basketball and their willingness to make the extra pass, make the good decision. And I do think that coaching is where this all comes down to. And Butler just seems to always have that X factor in terms of the smarts, the decision. They're not going to make the mistakes that other teams make. So I do think that Butler will upset Arkansas as the 10 seed over the 7 seed.
I do like that 10-7 pick. Butler's a team out of the Big East. They've been playing a brutal schedule all season long, so they're ready for any type of competition that's going to come their way. I think Vegas agrees with us, right? I think Butler's about a 1 or 2 point favorite.
Really?
On the betting line, yeah. So that's really interesting.
I have Butler all the way in the Sweet 16.
Wow.
So
I think there's something to be said. Butler's one of the only teams that's beaten Villanova this year, and
they were number 1 at the time.
And they were number 1 at the time.
They were. You have any other upsets in this region, or any games that you find that might be interesting?
I mean,
Butler's the one that stands out.
Butler over Purdue is my big one in this region. I mean, I have Alabama over Virginia Tech, but that's an 8-9 game.
Yeah.
I really thought about Stephen F. Austin beating the number 3 seed Texas Tech, but I couldn't bring myself.
Stephen F. Austin beat West Virginia a couple years ago, so I think that's what still sticks in people's minds.
Yeah.
I like Marshall this year, and I think people are quick to defend Wichita State because Wichita State has a great resume. They're in the top 10 frequently.
But they don't have the defense.
They don't have the defense, and Marshall has the scoring. They're led by this guy, John Elmore. He's got like 23 points per game, 6 rebounds, 7 assists. So I look for him to spark the Thundering Herd, and I'm going to take a chance on Marshall this time around. And
if the Shockers do survive the first round, I do think you're looking at one very entertaining matchup versus West Virginia in the second round. One of the best defenses facing one of the best offenses. It will be Goliath versus Goliath in that sense.
I don't think there's a West Virginia game that's not interesting.
That's true. That is true.
They're all super.
And we get to watch Bob Huggins do his thing also.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly.
And another good thing to look for in upsets is they happen like during the afternoon, right? Like there's 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock games. The stadium hasn't quite filled up yet, so those favorites don't really feel comfortable. They're kind of still asleep maybe. So just something else to consider when you're putting in those upsets. Now we have one more part to talk about, the regional favorite. Who do you think is going to come out of this region and why?
I don't think it's any surprise again. Out of all the regions, this seems like one of the regions that there's definitely a go-ahead, front runner, and that's Villanova. Villanova has been the class of the NCAA this year, and they're the class of this Eastern region simply because they were lucky enough to get Purdue and Texas Tech in their region. I do not think Purdue and Texas Tech are the strongest 2 or 3 seeds, and Villanova, they do have a nice path to get to the Final Four yet again. Villanova is number 1 in the NCAA in offensive efficiency. They have some strength that not most teams have, especially good teams, good programs. They have 4 juniors on their starting roster, headed by Jalen Brunson, who's averaging 19.4 points per game, 3.1 rebounds per game, and 4.7 assists per game, and Mikal Bridges, who's averaging 18 points per game. Their backcourt is strong, and they shoot the lights out of the 3 ball. So I know a lot of our watchers have been seeing Michigan and what they can do getting hot with threes, but you haven't even probably watched Villanova yet, and they can shoot about over 50% from 3 in a game and devastate you. They are by far and away favorites to win this Eastern region.
Yeah, and I think they did luck out with the rest of the region. No slight to the other teams on there, but compared to some of the other 1 seeds, I think
compared to Virginia, I mean, come on, they got a cakewalk.
Right, exactly. So, Oliver, thank you so much for that analysis on the East region. We're going to send it back to the couches now for our players to watch and hidden gems in this region, guys.
Thank you, John and Connor. My player to watch in the East is Keenan Evans. Keenan Evans got injured earlier in the year, but before that, he was one of the best scorers in the nation. He could score on you in any way, and he's almost unguardable when he was healthy. The Texas Tech Raiders were raced off to a 14-1 record with him, and then after they got injured, they lost a bunch of games. But you could tell he's the X factor, and their seed may have dropped after losing those games, but they were leading the conference with him, and they looked like one of the best teams in the nation. He's certainly the X factor, and with him, I think they can make a run in this tournament.
My player to watch for the East region is Carson Edwards from Purdue. He's one of the best players in the country. He's really the heart of the Purdue team. When they do well, it's largely a part of him. When they don't do well, of course, it's when his play isn't as great as against Michigan. But he's a very good player again, very talented overall. One of the best, first team all Big Ten. He averages 18 points a game, very solid. And he's not very tall, unfortunately, but he can make up for that in arm length. And he knows how to get by other good guards in the Big Ten. He's, like I said, the heart and soul of one of the best teams of the country, and he's going to lead them to do good things in the tournament.
For my hidden gem, I'm going with Jalen Adams from St. Bonaventure. St. Bonaventure has a game tonight, but if they could win, which I think they will, upset UCLA, they can make a run in this tournament with Jalen Adams. He's probably, I would say he's a top 25 player in the nation. He's a great scorer and has made for a great backcourt on St. Bonaventure. He's a senior with a ton of experience. He's a 3-time first team All-Atlantic 10 player, and he actually won Conference Player of the Year. So he could lead this team past UCLA, past Florida, maybe make a run in this tournament.
My hidden gem is Kalen Martin from Butler, and he's a very good player. He averages 20 points a game as well as 6 assists, which is very impressive. I've really liked to see how much he's emerged from his freshman year, really see the development and the maturity of him. And I also really like him for hidden gem just because of the success of the Butler program. They're consistently one of the teams that knows how to get through team after team in the tournament, and he's a very big part of that as a senior now in a big way. And I also like him too because of his past games against Villanova, the top team in the nation at the time. He averaged, I think, or scored like 29 points a game. In another game against one of the best teams as well, Xavier, he did absolutely great. And a few years ago in the tournament against the Tar Heels, he scored 17 points in 17 minutes. So he has experience there, and he's already their best player. So I think because of Butler's history and because of his quality of play, he's my hidden gem.
Thanks, Jack. I thought that was a good point, and I think Butler could pull off this upset. I'm going to send it back to the guys at the desk to talk about the Midwest and the West region. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin and Jack, for more great analysis on the East region. You might notice we have a new analyst here, Akshay Luthra, and when we come back from this quick break, he's going to help us break down the Midwest region.
Nope, West region. B-roll, hey lads, what's up?
Oh my gosh.
Hey, how's it going in here?
Hey, what's up? Wow, what is Jordan? You done with the script? Wow, this is crazy. Wow,
Liza.
Alright, well lads, I'm going downstairs.
All right, guys, they're gone. Put the game on.
Finally.
Go, go, go. Come on, Clemson.
Welcome back to Sportsnite. We're here with Akshay Luthra to break down the West region. Michigan's home region coming in at a 3 seed behind Xavier, North Carolina, Ohio State also in this region. So a lot of fun teams and good games to watch out for. But I got to ask you, Akshay, what is your game that you think that people should be most looking out for in this West region?
The most exciting game, it's a round 1 game, and it's going to be Providence versus Texas A&M. Texas A&M, whenever there's an SEC team not named Kentucky in basketball, I never really root for them because they kind of suck. And the thing with Providence is they have played in that tough region. They played in the Big East. They played and have defeated a number 1 seed in this tournament 3 times. Xavier twice, Villanova once. They have that experience in the tough games. And I really think that using that experience, they've gone against Rhode Island, another tough team. They've gone against Butler, another tough team. Xavier, Creighton, Villanova, they can just take those tough games and then pull out another tough one. Texas A&M is seated above them, but I really feel that Providence is a better team, and I think it'll be a close one, but whenever it's SEC versus Big East in basketball, I got to go with the Big East team, and that's Providence for this one.
I've got the same thing. I also have Providence winning that 7-10 game. So.
Yeah, I think this region, it's tough because there's not that many options. Some people look at South Dakota State against Ohio State because South Dakota State, I believe, has a really high scorer in Mike Daum. But Providence, it's kind of like the Butler scenario, right? Big East versus SEC, and people are going to stick with the stronger conferences. And even as it gets later in the tournament, we'll see ACC teams, we'll see Big East teams, maybe Big Ten teams. It's just these common trends. So that's really neat. I like that pick. What is your upset game in here? I guess I jumped the gun a little bit in going into the upsets, but do you have an upset in here?
You actually mentioned them, so it was a perfect segue. It was South Dakota State, and the big reason is they're playing Ohio State. Ohio State are the perennial March Madness chokers. I don't know what they do, but they always love screwing people's brackets in the first round. As Michigan people, we love that, and 90% of us have that pick just because it's Ohio State. But when you got a team like South Dakota State, they do, like you said, have that big score, the score that can really trouble Ohio State. And Ohio State, they've been the Big Ten, so I kind of just took out my entire conference argument that I had in the last one. But when you got a name like the Jackrabbits, how can you not root for the Jackrabbits just by default? And I think we could see South Dakota State really, I guess we should say, hopping over their competition and knocking out Ohio State first round once again and helping all the Michigan brackets and Michigan fans again.
Well, I think that's a good pick and one of the best puns that we've had all year on the show.
Good
so
one.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you, sir.
So I assume you don't have South Dakota State going all the way to the Final Four. So
don't,
who is it from
unfortunately.
that West region that you have going to San Antonio?
I had to make a pick slightly by default on this one because we kind of do go to Michigan. So I did pick Michigan to go all the way on this one. But there is a reason behind it. It wasn't just because I went to Michigan. Michigan and UNC are probably going to take each other on in a crucial, crucial game. And I feel the winner of that game, whoever it is, goes on to the Final Four. So now it becomes who wins Michigan versus UNC. Well, when we played UNC earlier, we did lose. But UNC, I don't think they missed a three that entire day because they were just on fire. And also, it was one of those early games which Michigan, as historically proven, cannot get early games and do not know how to win early games. Now, with Michigan on an absolute tear, destroying all of their Big Ten rivals, UNC, yeah, they did really well, and yeah, they're in the ACC, so I got to give them that. They did just win their tournament also, but I think Michigan just goes to another level when there's a tournament to play for, and I really think that if there's any team that's going to beat UNC before the Final Four, it's going to be Michigan. They have the matchup. They have the potential defense necessary. They have what's needed. So whoever wins that game is going to move on, and I personally think that Michigan's going to get it done and go blue.
Akshay, I'm glad that you could find a crucial game in this tournament. It's pretty tough to tell a team that it's not a crucial game,
That's
right?
true.
Is that
That's
a
true.
fair point? But definitely, like Michigan, they're hot. You got to go with the hot teams, and they're definitely going to be one of the competitive teams in this region to make it to the Final Four. So that's something exciting to look for. Now I want to get back to the couches, find out what players are going to stand out in this region. So let's throw it back to Jack and Justin.
Thanks, guys, and now time for our player analysis. My player to watch in this region is Luke May from the North Carolina Tar Heels. Now, there's multiple players I could go with for the Heels, like Joel Berry, the reigning MVP of last year's tournament, or Theo Pinson, who can do it all. But I have to go with Luke May. Now, Luke May I thought was terrible at first as a freshman, but he's greatly exceeded my expectations. He's certainly no Hansbrough or Sean May, some of the previous Tar Heel greats that I get nostalgic about, but he's a heck of a player for North Carolina. He averages 17 and 10 a game. He can shoot threes, and what I love about him is he runs the floor so well, and that's part of what Carolina does so excellent for years, is the Carolina way, by establishing their will, by making other teams run and overpowering them with a high-tempo, up-tempo offense. And Luke May is an absolute big factor in that as well for North Carolina. And also have to go with him too because of his performance last year against Kentucky. He nailed down a shot with like 0.2 seconds left to beat them and advance the Heels to the Final Four. He's shown in the past he can come up big for North Carolina, and now as their go-to guy, I think he'll get it done. This is a bit of an unorthodox Carolina team. He's really their only big man, whereas they usually have two really good bigs, and that's where they dominate, but they rely more on the three. But Luke May's definitely helped transform this team, and he's going to do big things for the Heels.
My player to watch is Trevon Blewett out of Xavier. Xavier, for the first time, I believe, has become a 1 seed in the tournament, and Trevon Blewett has been the face of the team. He averaged 20 points per game throughout the year and in the Big East tournament. He's a senior with experience, and he's getting showered with honors right now. He's gotten five first all-team honors, as well as being in the running for the Wooden Award, National Player of the Year, and the Naismith Award. And with him leading the team, I think Xavier could potentially win the tournament.
Great point there. Now for my hidden gem, I'm going to go with Mike Dom from South Dakota State. And they call him the Dominator for a reason. He's an excellent scorer. He averages 24 a game. And he also rebounds 10 rebounds a game, which is outstanding. He's actually down a bit from last year where he averaged, I think, 25 or 26, but his rebounding has gone up as a result. Really great scorer. He scored 51 points in one game, which is just outstanding. I don't care if it's South Dakota State he plays for, Utah, or North Carolina, any team. Anytime you can get 51 points in a game, that's special. I think he does have to come up big, obviously, for the team this year. In previous years, he's only scored about 16 or 17 for South Dakota State. That's not going to get it done. But I think this year, with more publicity and more momentum from what he's been able to accomplish, I think he's going to get it done with his great skill set from shooting and rebounding and three-point shooting. He's got it all, and I think he's absolutely going to deliver, at least in this first round for South Dakota State.
My hidden gem is Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter Jr. is actually one of the most talented players in March Madness. The issue is that he was injured throughout most of the season, but I believe he's a top 10 draft prospect. And with Missouri being an 8 seed, they've been slept on a little bit, and now they finally got Michael Porter Jr. back unexpectedly. And with great star power from him, they could upset a few teams in this tournament. He's got great size. He's 6'9", 220 pounds. And with great size, athletic ability, and a great skill set, this guy could lead his team very far, much more than people expected.
Great point there. Well, that's going to do it for our player analysis here. John and Connor, back to you guys.
All right, thanks, guys. Jack Roberts talking about the Jack Rabbits of South Dakota State. A lot of people talking about that team, so we'll see what happens over the weekend. And we've come down to our final region, and after a brief hiatus from Sportsnite,
here we are.
We're pleased
back.
to have Brooke Weiss back in Studio A to break down.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here.
To break down this Midwest region for us, and I mean, this is another one of those stacked regions. I think Kansas, Duke, Michigan State. A lot of attractive options here for you to choose from, Brooke. But what is your game to watch out of this region?
Before we even talk about that, let's talk about this region of doom, region of death, title that this region is getting. This region has a little bit of everything. I mean, there's Hall of Fame coaches, National Player of the Year candidates, NBA prospects. I'm excited to see what's going down. But away from that, let's talk about Rhode Island versus Oklahoma. It is impossible to talk about Oklahoma without talking about Trae Young. He is a freshman who leads the nation in scoring and assists. He is the first player to do this throughout a regular season. 27.4 points per, averages points per game, 8.8 assists per game. He is compared to Steph Curry for a reason. My question here is, can he hold the team on his back? He's a freshman. He's new to this whole experience, this new playing field. He hasn't experienced an NCAA tournament. So without Young on the floor, the question is, what is Oklahoma, what can they do? They have 0.97 points per possession without him. This would put the Sooners at 322 in unadjusted offensive efficiency. Bottom line, strong first half of the season, 12 of 13 games, ranked 4th in the nation at the beginning, but they lost the last 11 of their 15 games. This does not resemble a tournament team in the slightest. So with that being said, they're playing against 7th seed Rhode Island. And what does Rhode Island have? Rhode Island has E.C. Matthews. He is a perimeter scorer. Rhode Island has shut down defense on the perimeter. They also have Jared Terrell, who knows how to get to the free throw line, converts his attempts, knocks down his threes. He averages 17.2 points this season alone. So can Rhode Island force their turnovers and limit their own? That is what is going to be the outcome of this game.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100% on your analysis on Trae Young. Definitely a special player, but it is a team sport, and I think especially at this point in March, you need that cohesion, you need that chemistry, and it's all about Trae Young for Oklahoma, so I kind of like Rhode Island in
I've been
that
hearing
game.
that name all year long, and we're going to find out whether he can rise to the occasion here under the spotlights of the NCAA tournament. Let me just say, I feel like I need to rise to the occasion here between two Big Ten Network student employees.
Shout out.
I'm going to try and raise my professionalism a little bit here so that we can keep everything flowing smoothly. Now I want to hear what upset pick you have in this region. A couple interesting choices here that I've heard about, New Mexico State being one. I want to know who you think is the upset pick in this region.
You touched right on it.
Okay.
Everyone loves the 5 and 12 matchups. Both of these teams, Clemson and New Mexico State, have the defense necessary, but I think this game's going to come down to free throws. Let's talk about Clemson. First off, they are not the same team as they once were. Once senior forward Dante Grantham's season-ending knee injury in late January, they have not been as offensively potent without him. To put this into perspective, Clemson made 56.6% of its twos with Grantham on the court, but only 45.4% without him. They're 2-6 against tournament teams without him. So guards Marquise Reed and Gabe DeVoe will have to pick up the scoring slack. They have that aggressive defense. They're in the top 10, but I don't think that's going to be enough against New Mexico State. Switching over to New Mexico State, they have only allowed 31% from its opponents to shoot behind the arc. They are the 8th best three-point defense in the season, one of the top defensive teams in the country. They've won 85% of their games in this season alone. Who's their star player? They got Zach Lofton. He can get going from the three-point arc. He shoots almost 40% from that range. They also, I know the Western Atlantic Conference is not the most competitive.
The what?
The WAC.
The WAC.
The WAC.
Of course. How can I
The
forget
WAC, the WAC. There we go.
You got it right.
I got it right. Come on. Cut me some slack. But I think we need to talk about its critical wins here. I mean, they got wins over Davidson, New Mexico twice, and Miami on a neutral floor. So that's impressive to say the least. But it is Chris Jan's first season as coach, but he was named the WAC Coach of the Year.
Okay, all right.
And yeah, I mean, something else to mention, the East Coast, Clemson will go to the West Coast to play. The crowd will not be in their favor, something that's definitely small, but definitely important to talk about.
I think this is a really interesting pick. Do you guys remember Mark Donnell, Michigan?
I know him.
Just
I know
last year, he was
Mark.
playing basketball here at Michigan. Graduate transfer to Clemson, so he'll be hitting the hardwood in this game. I think this one's interesting. I'm not buying into this pick because this is one of those games where everyone's buying in, and I think that at the end of the day, it's just not going to happen.
I didn't convince you?
No, I believe that New Mexico State is capable of getting it done, but Clemson's a favorite. A lot of people like New Mexico State. I say go against the grain here and stay with a favorite.
You guys want to hear a serious upset pick? I don't care who wins that game between Clemson and New Mexico State because College of Charleston is going to beat Auburn and is going to beat the winner of that game and go to the Sweet 16. That's my upset pick, but
I need a little more convincing on that, but we'll talk later.
it's definitely a long shot, but I like the Charleston Cougars.
What if Penn beat Kansas? That would be
My
be
bracket
history.
will
That'd be
destroyed.
history, 16
So-
Everyone's
1.
bracket would
But
be
I think
destroyed.
Penn and Kansas being the two teams that it was to happen to, I think that would be.
Sometimes those Ivy League schools pull off incredible upsets
Right.
in the first
It'd
round.
be all the
so
talk of this
It
tournament.
could happen. Brooke, who do you ultimately have coming out of this Midwest region to the Final Four?
Okay, I need you guys to take a breath, relax. I got Michigan State, okay? I know this is crazy, but I have Michigan State. Like I said, this region is top heavy. We have Kansas, we have Duke. I know Michigan is 1-11 in Duke, and they lost 88-81 against Duke earlier this season. But I think Tom Izzo, he had 2 weeks off. He's recovering. He's hungry. Let me tell you, he wants to win. So between Bridges and Jackson, they are this dynamic duo at the front court. They are going to be the players to watch. Jackson will be a household name by the end of this tournament. Mark my words. I mean, listen, Michigan State's no stranger to the tournament. Miles Bridges, he's 6'7". He can play inside or outside. He's shooting almost 40% behind the arc. Jaren Jackson, he's Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, look, I know they're 2-4 against the tournament team, the teams that made the NCAA tournament, but I think that with this rehab, with this time off, Tom Izzo will be able to take this team to the Final Four.
I don't think that's crazy by any stretch of the imagination. Tom Izzo in March.
Yeah.
It's like a match made.
I mean, I have TCU beating them in the second round, but you know, it is hard to doubt. It is hard to doubt Tom Izzo. I will give you that. Brooke, Thank you so much
Thank you.
for coming and breaking down the Midwest region. Great analysis there. And we're going to send it over to the couches for the final player to watch and hidden gems segment. Guys, take it away.
Thanks, guys. We're going to go into the player analysis for the Midwest. My player to watch is Devontae Graham out of Kansas. He's led Kansas the whole season to a #1 seed, and I believe he's the most valuable player in the nation. His perimeter shooting, passing, and defending are at the forefront of everything Kansas does. He's a senior with experience, averages 17 points per game, and he was the Big 12 Player of the Year. I think that's enough to say that he can be the face of this Kansas team and potentially lead them to a national championship.
My player to watch is Marvin Bagley from Duke. Now, no one hates Duke as much as I do. I just cringe when I hear that word. It's terrible. But I'd be crazier than the Cameron Crazies not to acknowledge this player. He's perhaps the most talented player in the nation. He averages 21 points a game and about 11 rebounds in the ACC, which is just outstanding. He can do it all. He has the athleticism, the shot, the defense, and everything. He's absolutely probably going to be a one and done and a top 3 pick, but if he can get going with Duke, he's going to do a lot of great things. One thing that really makes him stand out is what he's done with Grayson Allen. He's a great player, but Grayson Allen, who's really been the heart and soul of the Duke team for the last couple of years, has kind of taken a secondary role behind him because this guy's just so uber talented. I think, too, he's just such a great player for Duke, especially due to the fact that even when Duke loses to teams like UVA or Virginia or North Carolina, he still comes up big in scoring and rebounding for the Duke Blue Devils. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope they get eliminated in the first game, but if they do advance, he's going to do a lot of big things for Duke.
For my hidden gem, I'm going to go with Jaren Jackson Jr. out of Michigan State. I think he's overlooked as Miles Bridges is the star of this team. But if you really think about it, I think Jackson is the most talented player. In fact, he's likely going to be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft. His size, he's 6'11", 242 pounds. I think he has the most two-way potential of any player in this nation. He averages 3.2 blocks per game. He can shoot the 3. He shoots 40%. He was Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. And I think he's going to be, as Brooks said, I think he's going to be a big name in this tournament, and you better watch out for him.
And my hidden gem is Angel Delgado from Seton Hall. Now, he's not a household name by any means, but I picked him because he's a very good player, and he's also a change of pace from your typical guard play. He's a big man. He's about 6'9", and he's as solid as a rock. He's an excellent rebounder. He averages 11 rebounds a game for the Pirates. Very good player there. He's not an excellent scorer. He averages about 14, which is still very good, but that's not his game. He can really dominate inside. He's their go-to guy off the boards. A big reason the Pirates have had so much success this year is because of his offensive rebound abilities that gives them second chances, and it really propels Seton Hall to do well. I think he's going to come up really big, and I think it's also important too because in today's game, where so many teams just rely on the 3 in the small ball lineup, having that big man can really be a difference maker. He's not going to score more than probably 16 or 15 points a game, but doesn't mean he's not going to give a great game defensively or on the board, so watch out for Angel Delgado.
I like Delgado. He's had a great year, and the guy's got a lot of potential to make some noise in this tournament. Thank you. We're going to head back to the guys at the desk.
All right, thanks, guys. As a Jersey kid, I appreciate the Seton Hall shout-out. Great job on all 4 regions. We appreciate your breakdown, and we will be right back. We're going to be joined by Oliver Moody to give you our ultimate Elite 8, Final 4, and championship picks. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Entertainment Buzz.
Welcome to Turned On.
Welcome to this season's first episode of our show, Alley Oop.
Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Show.
Good evening, and welcome to Newsfeed.
Welcome back to Wolverine Women.
Hey, what's good, everybody? Welcome into Sportsnite.
All right, welcome back to Sports Night. Guys, let's bring it home. We're getting nice and cozy here at the anchor desk, and we're going to give you our Elite 8, Final 4, and championship picks. Should we just go right down the line, shall we?
John, do you grow a bit?
Yeah, I did over commercial break. I hit an insane growth spurt in the last minute or so.
I think it's time for you to try back out for the basketball team.
Maybe so. Maybe I should be playing in this Final 4 myself.
There we go.
For now, I'll just give you my predictions in the Elite 8. Let's start with the East region, I've got Villanova going up against Texas Tech. And I mentioned I almost picked Stephen F. Austin to beat Texas Tech in the first round. But the more I looked into Texas Tech, the more that I liked them. They have a great defense. Keenan Evan gets it done on offense. But I think Villanova will outlast them with their offense as well, and they're great from three. So I like Villanova to advance out of the East region. Moving on to the Midwest, I've got Kansas going up against Duke. Kansas has one of the best all-around backcourts in the country. I like Duke, but they're a little bit inexperienced. They're a little bit unpredictable, so I like Kansas. Duke is a little bit inexperienced and a little bit unpredictable, but I was going to say they can hit their stride at the right time. They've shown flashes of brilliance this season, and I always pick Kansas to go to the Final Four, and they never come through for me, so I actually went with Duke for that one in the Midwest region. Moving on to the West now, Michigan and Ohio State. Wouldn't that be an amazing rivalry matchup?
What
in
a
the
regional
Final Four?
final.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State surprised a lot of people this year. I like some of the wins that they had, especially early on. And then Michigan, of course, is just, they've been so hot of late. And Beeline's teams always perform well in March. I like Michigan to knock off their arch rival and advance to the Final Four as well. Finally, in the South region, I've got Virginia going up against Cincinnati. Virginia is sort of the best team in the nation right now. They won the ACC tournament, and they had the best record in the country. Cincinnati, we talked about their great defense, but I think Virginia will outlast them. So that brings me to the Final Four, Villanova against Duke. This is what I meant to say earlier. Duke is unpredictable, a little inexperienced, and Villanova is not. Villanova is going to advance to the championship in that one. Michigan, Virginia, tough to go against Michigan, but I just think Virginia is the better team defensively. They're more well-rounded, so I think Villanova and Virginia are going to meet in San Antonio in the finals. And it was, again, the defensive juggernaut in Virginia and the offensive juggernaut in Villanova. At the end of the day, I had to go with Virginia. You know why? Because defense wins championships. Mark it down. Virginia Cavaliers are going to win your 2018 March Madness. That's my pick.
All right, John, I like that. I got some similarities, but let's talk about which bracket is going to win, which is going to be mine.
Wow.
But, okay, let's start out in the East. I have Villanova versus Purdue. Villanova, you know, 5th year in a row being a top 2 seed. They're consistent. Coach Jay Wright is prepared. He knows what the tournament is like. On the other hand, we have Purdue. I mean, look, Isaac Haas, 7'2". He's reliable at the free throw line, 81%. I think that's what's going to take them further. Midwest, we got Kansas and Michigan State. Listen, Kansas, this is the 14th time they've been the #1 seed. This isn't a surprise to them. They know what they're doing. Michigan State, I said it before, you know, Bridges and Jackson, I think, are going to take this team to the Elite Eight. Moving on to the West, Michigan and North Carolina. This is one of the best defensive teams that John Beilein has had this season and for a while. You know, I hope John Beilein found a German way to tell Mo Wagner that fouling is stupid, like he said before. I'd love to see them advance. They're playing, I have them playing UNC, North Carolina. And moving on to the South, we got Virginia versus Cincinnati. Listen, Virginia's playing some of the greatest defense we've ever seen. They've only lost 2 games all season. They capped off a fantastic year with the ACC Tournament Championship on Saturday. They are the top-ranked defense in the nation. I have them playing Cincinnati, and Cincinnati is a tough, ruthless squad full of aggressive defenders. But let's take it to the Final Four. I think Villanova is going to pull out over Purdue. You know, they got that trio, Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, McCall Bridges. This is what's going to take them to the Final Four and, as you can see, beyond. Michigan State will take it over Kansas. For the West, North Carolina, unfortunately, I hate to say it, is going to take it over Michigan. And in the South, Virginia, their defense, like you said, John, defense wins championships. It will take themselves to the Final Four spot. But let's talk about that NCAA championship. I also have Villanova versus Virginia. Listen, Villanova is a powerhouse. You know, 5 of their top 6 regulars shoot at least 38% from the three-point range. That alone is what I think is going to take them to the top and win this championship this season. What do you think?
Pick. 2 out of 3 years, you're saying Villanova is gonna win the NCAA championship?
I think.
Well, you have them going all the way there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but defense wins championships, like I said.
Villanova doesn't play any defense at all. None.
Right, that's not how they got here, I guess.
All right, moving on to my picks. In what is it? The
East region.
The East region. I do have Villanova going all the way and taking out Texas Tech. I do think Texas Tech will beat Purdue in the Sweet 16, and Villanova will face Texas Tech, but they shall easily get out of the Eastern region and be one of the Final Four teams. In the Midwest, I do have a surprising take. I have Auburn over Kansas. I've been known to rock chalk, but finally I have given it up because they devastate you. Do not trust those Jayhawks. They will burn you. And likewise, I do think that Duke has been one of those teams. They've had crazy years where out of nowhere it seems they've made a run in the tournament, and they've had great years where they've fallen short. But I do think this Duke team does have that X factor in Marvin Bagley. I do want to see how other teams will defend him, and I do think that matchup versus Michigan State, likely in the Sweet 16, will be one of the best games of the tournament. But I have Duke coming out and going to the Final Four in the Midwest. In the West region, I have Gonzaga going to the Final Four. North Carolina will beat Michigan again this season in the Sweet 16. I do think they have more class, the coaching and experience. But then Gonzaga and North Carolina in a rematch of last year's national championship game. I think Mark Few and the Bulldogs will be fueled to get a revenge game, and they will make it back to the Final Four, but it will end there to Arizona, as Arizona upsets Virginia in the South region, and then they go to the championship game where I have them playing Villanova, and then Villanova winning their second championship in 3 years.
Good amount of chalk there, but a nice surprise with Auburn. I think that's an interesting pick.
I thought Arizona was interesting too.
Yeah, Arizona is a team.
They lost by 25 when they played Purdue on a neutral floor.
That is true, but that's a different team earlier in the year, losing Alonzo Trier, and now that he's coming back, they've shifted the way that they play. They've shifted the direction of their team towards Ayton, and because of that, they're big friendly instead of guard friendly now. And I do think that their offensive scheme, Sean Miller, they will be fuel to get this one, especially all the controversy that's happened with their organization this past year.
I was going to say, I like this story that they're kind of fighting the FBI investigation, the media allegations that are coming out, and they're just going to keep playing basketball. And they got some stars. Sean Miller's a great coach.
I do think one important thing to note, I do see this with Duke and Michigan State and Virginia and Arizona. Those are 4 tremendous teams. And you could pick one of those 4 to win the national championship. And it's going to be tough because you do have to pick one, and you can't. I mean, they're on the same side of the bracket. And those are teams that likely could have been 1 or 2 seeds instead of being in the same side of their region.
All right, I'm going to wrap it up here. And when you see my bracket, you're going to see a lot of chalk. I think this is a season especially where this is a season where the mid-majors didn't really pull off that many upsets against top teams. I like Villanova. They play offense, they play defense, and they're always diving on the floor for loose balls. They're going to get into that Elite Eight matchup with Purdue. And it's interesting because if Purdue is hot, they're really scary. They have 4 guys that can shoot the 3, and their 5th player is 7'2". He's a freaking monster. Looks like he should be in a Bond movie. And Haas has been unbelievable this year. So I think Villanova knows how to front the post, which is why they're going to move on past Purdue, get to the Final Four. In the Midwest region, I like Kansas and Duke. Duke, we haven't really given Coach K a mention, but I believe Brooks said that he has beaten Tom Izzo like 11 out of 12 times. I think Duke's going to continue that success here. And I think Kansas, they have a nice section there, but they've had a lot of questions all year. It was a little bit shaky in the beginning. Of course, they rounded out to form to win the Big 12.
But even their coach was surprised that they won the Big 12.
Right, yeah. When Bill Self starts asking questions about his team, then as a bracket picker, I don't know that I can pick you to the Final Four. So I like Duke moving on in that matchup. To the West, I think we've already mentioned UNC Michigan. It's going to be an incredible game, but UNC's got the athletes. They've got Roy Williams. They've been in the position. They won it last year. They're going to move on to the Elite Eight. Gonzaga is going to beat Xavier, I think. And I've got North Carolina in a national title rematch. I know Oliver picked Gonzaga in that one. I just think North Carolina has got that ACC experience. They're too strong. And speaking of ACC experience, Virginia. I'm done asking questions about Virginia. Yes, it doesn't seem like they score the basketball, but they always compensate with incredible defense. Virginia's going to move past Tennessee. I think Tennessee got a favorable draw. If it were Kentucky in Tennessee's position and Tennessee had Kentucky's position, I think Kentucky might be the team in that Elite Eight spot. Virginia's going to move on with strong defense. In the Final Four, Villanova and Duke. I think Villanova has better experience in this game. The Bagley freshman is very strong down-low presence, which will be a challenge for Nova. But once Nova gets hot, there's really nothing that can stop them. Nova into the championship game. And we have an ACC tournament rematch, North Carolina, Virginia. Virginia's going to take this one again. They're just a strong defensive team. And setting up another Villanova-Virginia final, I know we've covered that a lot. I think, as I mentioned, John likes Virginia for defensive purposes. I like Villanova for defensive purposes. Villanova gets up and down the court. They hustle throughout the game. If they can get past the first weekend, it usually seems to be a problem for Villanova. They lost to Wisconsin last year. Villanova could be.
But man, can they shoot lights out from downtown
in San Antonio?
The Wildcats.
What's that?
They could shoot that. They heck out of the three ball.
They do.
I mean, I don't think there's any better three-point shooting team, offensive efficiency team.
The players on the team, the coach say that their best three-point shooter is their center, Mari Spellman. So I hope that they're hot and they can make their way to the national championship game.
In case you're not catching any hints, we think Villanova will do well.
Consistency is key.
I think Villanova-Virginia was 3 out of our 4.
For most of us, I think I'm the only one that has Virginia falling early, but they definitely seem like they're the 2 best teams amongst the field.
So don't pick Villanova. Don't pick Villanova.
Look, no one knows what's going to happen. Make sure you stick with us all year so you can see me rub it in everyone's face down the stretch of the school year here.
All right.
But let the madness begin. Thank you so much for joining us on this special edition March Madness Sports Night episode. We're excited to check in again next week, see how the first weekend went, and we'll see you next time. Have yourself a great sports night.